I went to the right person.
Yeah.
And when I showed Mr. Tsotsi the door, I had applied my mind, I went to the right people, the users told me, we don't need this thing, we've not placed an order. Yeah.
And, Chair, I know you're anxious.
Yes, I don't see the point, and it's taking long to come.
Can I do one more thing? Mr. Koko, the disciplinary hearing was based on a report. There was an investigation report by Ernst & Young. Correct?
Chair, Mr. Sikasimbe was suspended pending an investigation.
Yes.
There must have been a company or there must have been somebody who did the investigation.
Yeah, but didn't you see the investigation report when you came back?
No, Chair, I may have seen it, I may not have seen it, but the way things work, you suspend a person, you do the investigation, and Ms. Daniels dealt with it.
Yeah, but the chairperson wants me to cut to the chase.
Yeah, I don't recall seeing it, Chair.
Yeah, that investigation report is on page 785. It's Ernst & Young investigation report.
785.
Yes.
I am there, Chair.
You found it. Yeah.
July 31st.
Yes. And in the interest of time, if you turn the page to 804. 804.
Oh.
Yeah. The investigators had 804.
Yes, I'm there.
Yeah. You see, against paragraph 6.2, Mr. Neo Tolanku's name.
Yes.
And the investigators had interviewed him.
Yes.
And they set out there in those paragraphs that he's the one he says that the draft that was received, which was firstly sent to you, apparently you refused to sign it. He then amended that draft to include Mr. Tsotsi's name and to word it the way he did.
What happened?
Mr. Neo Tolanku, the head of legal, chairperson, when interviewed by the investigators, he says...
When interviewed?
When interviewed.
When interviewed,
yeah. When interviewed by the investigators, he tells them he's the one who ultimately worded the letter that Mr. Tsotsi signed. The letter was meant to be signed by Mr. Koko. But when Mr. Koko refused to sign, he changed it. And it became the final product which Mr. Tsotsi signed.
Chairman, you know.
No,
so do you know what the point I'm making, which is what Mr. Sikasimbi is making? Because Mr. Koko has said the letter originated from Mr. Sikasimbi. But Sikasimbi says, here are the emails. The letter has been drafted by Kalima and Suzanne Daniels, is ultimately finalized by Mr. Neo Tolanku, he tells the investigators that, and not Mr. So Mr. Sikasimbi was not responsible for drafting the letter and causing the chairperson to sign it.
Chairman,
hang on,
I'm finding this
hang on,
ridiculous.
But Mr. Lega, where will that take us? Let's assume Mr. Sikasimbi was innocent. He should not have been suspended.
Yes, Chair.
Where does that, how does that help us with the issue of the suspensions and Mr. Koko's suspension? He has a certain version about why he was suspended.
Yes, Chair.
It may be right, it may not be right, but even assuming that Mr. Kasimbe was innocent of the allegation, how does that
Well, we will
help with the question of the suspensions we are dealing with?
yes, Chair. That goes. The Chair,
I
I will go to Mr. Koko's affidavit,
yeah.
but I think he could answer the question. Then I'll leave that to go.
Yes, but
Link it to his affidavit.
no. But if I don't see why the question is important, shouldn't we move on to something else? I mean, even if Mr. Kasimbe was innocent, how does it help us with the suspensions of the 4 executives?
Yes, no, correct, Chair, but I'm not moving. I'm linking it to his affidavit.
Yeah,
So
but
I'm
how? And why is it important, even if you link it? That's my.
It goes to the veracity of Mr. Koko's version. I'm putting it in general terms.
Yeah,
Chair.
no, I think let's move on to.
Yes.
Let's go to the issues about the fact that Mr. Koko's name or his portfolio was mentioned at the Durban meeting.
Yes.
Let's talk about the fact that certain witnesses have said they had a meeting with him on the 10th, with him and Mr. Salim Essa. Let's talk about the time when he was called to a meeting and told about his suspension. Let's talk about the time when there was a discussion with him and the delegation of the board about him coming back. Those, as I recall, are really the important features. There may be some that I'm leaving out, which you will remember, of course.
Let me get to that, Chairperson, in this way. So, because Mr. Koko, this obviously weighed heavily with you, this matter of Sumitomo and Sikasimbi. And what you say is an unlawful instruction by Mr. Tsotsi, and you use the word to unsuspend Mr. Sikasimbi. It weighed heavily with you.
What's the question?
It weighed heavily with you.
I'm waiting for the question.
That's the question. The statement to you.
I'm saying that is
It's a yes or no.
That's what caused my suspension.
Yes, it weighed heavily with you.
I don't understand that question.
Yes or no?
Chair, I don't.
Chair,
I
you
don't
were
understand.
saying I was very upset and angry about what I regarded as a pressure being put on me.
Oh, of course. Yes, Chair. Of course.
Yes.
Yes.
Now, Mr. Tsotsi says in February 2015, he was called by Minister Brown and told that you are interfering in management.
Meaning him, Mr. Tsotsi, not
Yes,
Mr. Koko.
that Mr. Tsotsi is interfering in management.
It's just that you are speaking to Mr. Tsotsi and you're saying you, that you're saying Mr. Tsotsi says he was told you are, and it could be.
No, okay.
It could mean that, it could give the impression that Mr. Tsotsi was being told that Mr. Koko was interfering, whereas what you mean is.
Yes, no.
Yeah.
Thank you for the clarification, Chairperson. Mr. Tsotsi is told by the minister that you, Mr. Tsotsi, have received reports that you are interfering in management. Now, the minister, in her affidavit, has responded to that. And she says, yes, she received complaints from management or the executives. But one she can recall is that of the Sumitomo matter, where it was alleged that Mr. Tsotsi had signed a contract which, and I need to get what Minister Brown says, a chairperson allegedly interfering in management, And I tried to create. There have been complaints about Tsotsi both from the executives and the directorate. What comes to mind in particular was that one of the executives came to me in person complaining about Mr. Tsotsi's interference with operational issues, producing a letter allegedly penned by Mr. Tsotsi to a Japanese company about buying oil or some other fuel. I decided I had to intervene. This is why I invited Mr. Tsotsi, reprimanded him, and directed him to refrain from interfering with management. Mr. Tsotsi thinks it's you who told the minister this. What is your
Chair,
Are you asking whether he told the minister that Mr. Tsotsi was interfering?
Yes, and in particular about the Sumitomo matter.
Chair,
Yes.
Chair, I can tell you upfront, I've never talked to the minister about this. And if the minister says an executive, she must come in account.
No, that's fine.
But I've never talked to the minister about this matter. I always, and that's you, when you are an Eskom person, Chairman, when your blood is blue, protocol matters. My blood was blue, and I looked down at people who will jump the CE, jump the board, go to the minister. In the Eskom I grew up in, that's uncalled for. Mr. Tsotsi has got his own issues and is looking for friends. And this time he stands alone.
I'll come back to another issue. So you say you didn't tell the minister. At the time of your suspension, you have detailed in your affidavit what you said to the board. That is also captured in the minutes of what they say is P&G minutes of 11 March 2015. You refer to that in your affidavit. This matter does not appear there that you have reported it to the board.
Which matter?
The matter of Sumitomo, Mr. Tsotsi giving you unlawful instructions, and this being the reason why you are being suspended.
Does not appear on the board of the 11th of March that suspended me.
It doesn't even appear in your version of what you told the board. You told the board why are you not suspending the people who are responsible for generation? You mentioned two names, Mr. Who?
And Mr. Govender.
Govender and?
Yes. Mr. Nzokolo.
Yes.
Yes. And the answer is simple, Chair. You walk into a board meeting, the board has been deliberating the whole day, they have reached a conclusion, and you want to assume that the board is acting bona fides and is not influenced by other things. What just did not make sense to me was that the other person who should be, if what the board's bona fides is correct, then you'd expect other people to also be suspended. And it was a very difficult meeting. And all what I wanted to know from the board is that I'm not saying you are not making sense, but let's take your logic to the conclusion. You are just not making sense. If what we are saying is correct, you are not making sense. And when they asked me to go out, and I spent 40 minutes out, and they were deliberating, I thought they were hearing me, that really this person is making valuable inputs. When I came back after 40 minutes, there was no time to talk. Take this letter, sign here, go. That's what happened. When I had an opportunity to meet the board again, somewhere in May 2015, I told them.
Yes. What is clear from the evidence, Mr. Koko, is that you seem to have been given more time than the others. And it's apparent from the minutes, a long portion there appears of the meeting with you and the board. So you had time, and let's look at this against the background of what you say is the reason for your suspension. It dates back from 7, at least on your version, of March 2015. You say Mr. Matona calls you. On the 8th, he speaks with you. On the 9th, he speaks with you. On the 10th, he speaks with you. And then on the 11th in the morning, he still speaks with you and says we are going to be suspended. But even before the 11th, on the 10th, you are angry. And you leave your office, you go to Melrose Arch. You call Ms. Suzanne Daniels, this thing is bothering you, and you want her to advise you. So this thing is weighing heavily with you for 7, 8, 9, 10, 5 days. And there you are in the board meeting, in the meeting with the board delegation, and they say we are suspending you. And you say in your affidavit, I knew the reason for my suspension. But why don't you say, but the board members, this chairperson is misleading you?
Yes, Chair, I did tell the board that...
On the 11th?
I did tell the board on that day that this chairperson is misleading you, but on a different note. The reason I did not raise the Sumitomo matter is because when I met with Ms. Daniels, in Melrose Arch, he made me understand that any suspension based on Sumitomo, it will not hold. The board will have to find a better reason to suspend you. So when I listened to the board on the 11th of March, I took them bona fides, but all what I wanted to say to, Chairman, March 2015 was very difficult for Eskom, and I again invite you and your investigators to go and look at the IFC minutes of 26 February. In the minutes of IFC February, the IFC was saying, we are load shedding, we are bankrupt, government is not going to bail us out. So when you know that, so you then understand that no board can sit and do nothing. But all what I wanted is that we must all be treated the same, and we're not being treated the same.
But you see, if Ms. Daniels said to you on the 10th of March, the day before, that on the basis of that the board would have no grounds to suspend you in connection with the Setumo matter, wasn't that all the more reason why, if you thought that was the reason you were being suspended, that you should have raised it, because you now had the backing of a legal person saying there are no grounds on what you are telling me?
The reason for that, Chair, is that I was going to appear as if it's sour grapes, I'm accusing Mr. Tsotsi.
No, but if the position, as I understand it, and you must tell me if I misunderstand the position, if even as on that day, as the suspension, as the board was mentioning that you had to be suspended, you thought the reason why you were being suspended, you thought that Mr. Tsotsi was behind your suspension, and that he was behind your suspension because of your clash with him with regard to the Setumo matter, the suspension of Mr. Sikasimbi. Obviously, that's when you should have said, hang on, board members, there's something that you might not know. You might not know this. This man, the chairperson, is the one that seeks to have me suspended, and it's not something that is starting now. For the past 5 days, I've been having a discussion. I knew, I've been told that I was going to be suspended, and it was because of this A2 moment. This man, we have had a clash, and he is driving, is behind me being suspended. So I want you to know that these are the facts. Wasn't that, in other words, was the fact that Ms. Daniels had told you the Seitumo matter provides no good grounds for the board to suspend you? Was that not a stronger reason for you to raise that issue at the board meeting with the board?
Chair, you're making perfect sense. And maybe I should have done it. I did not do it. And the reason I did not do it is because the board was putting different reasons, which, if true, I could even be arrested.
Sorry, you could be?
Could not be arrested.
The board was giving different reasons that, if true, I could even be arrested.
Could even be arrested,
Yes, because the board was saying there is sabotage in your area. Mr. Koko, we have a reason to believe that in your area of business, there is sabotage. And I had no reason to say to the board, that line is far-fetched. I did not know what, I now know that the board had no evidence to that effect, but that's what was put to me. And it would not serve my purpose at that time, I thought, to argue the Zola Tsotsi line when there's sabotage being alleged on my part.
Yes. Of course, that suggests to me that when the board put the reasons that they were putting before you, the sabotage and so on, at that stage, your understanding was that the reason for your suspension was different. It was not this Seitumo matter. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Correct. And the only difference is that with time, I realized the allegations of sabotage were fake.
Okay. Mr. Stlager?
Yes. Thank you, Chair.
And my letter of suspension clearly says the board has got intention to investigate sabotage in my area. The letter of suspension clearly says that.
Yes. Okay. Mr. Stlager?
So the unlawfulness of the instructions of Mr. Tsotsi was not raised with the board. The threat that he will suspend you because you refuse to unsuspend, in your words, Mr. Sekasimbi, was not raised with the board. That Mr. Matona had come to see you and met with you or spoke with you, you showed him the letter, and he asked you, unsuspend Sekasimbi, otherwise you and I are going to be suspended, was not told to the board. Is that what you're saying to the chairperson?
Chairperson, on the 11th,
Yes.
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 In my first opportunity with the board, I raised it.
After you came back?
No. While I was still on suspension.
Or during suspension?
During suspension, sometime around May, we met in a...
Is that with the delegation that was discussing
Yes.
what was to happen?
Yes, I met with Ms. Daniels, I met with Mr. Koza, I met with Vinetlein. That was the first opportunity I could deal with it.
Okay.
Because I could realize this sabotage story that the board told me is fake.
Okay, all right.
Yes, but yeah, we can't leave it, Mr. Koko, as the first opportunity, because the first opportunity is what the PNG gave the people before they were suspended, to make representations to PNG.
But Chairman, I'm saying the first opportunity I had with the board on the 11th of March, the reason for my suspension, which is written in my letters, you go to my letters, you will find me, was that the board is investigating possible acts of sabotage on my part. And that threw a curveball that even if I can argue the Zola Tsotsi matter, what is it that the board has before them that would justify a charge of sabotage?
Yeah.
Remember, I'm a senior executive of Eskom. Eskom is a national key point. A sabotage in a national key point is treasonous. So that throws you out. So whether this Malesela issue or not becomes irrelevant. These people are accusing you for treason.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think you accepted, and you must tell me if you didn't accept, I think you accepted the proposition that after the board had told you their reasons for suspending you or wanting to suspend you, you accepted the reasons they gave you as genuine reasons.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Chair. So then, Mr. Koko, here is the version. If you didn't tell the board about all that, which are...
No, Chair, I object that I did not tell the board.
Oh,
I think you stepped in before you could finish. Maybe you was going to
No,
say on the 11th.
Oh, on the 11th.
Yeah,
Yes,
so
I'm
wait
talking the
until
11th.
he has finished. Yeah.
yes. I'm talking the 11th. So then comes this aspect. Because if you didn't tell the board about this issue that is the very basis of your affidavit as to why you were suspended, the version of the other witnesses is this. Let's start with Mr. Masango. Mr. Masango says, you call him to Melrose Arch on the 10th. He comes there, he doesn't know the place. He sees you on the balcony, you're on the phone with him, giving him directions. And he alights from the vehicle, he comes up to you, you take him into an office, and prior to you moving into that office, you ask for his cell phone, to hand over his cell phone, and you go into a meeting with Mr. Salim Essa on the 10th, and you start talking about how 4 executives are going to be suspended, 3 will not return, but you will return. So according to that version, you knew about the suspensions before they took place, and no wonder you didn't bother to tell the board about the Sikasimbi story.
Chair, I confirm to you that I knew about the suspension.
Yes.
And please,
Your suspension or
About
the
my
suspension
suspension.
of everybody?
My suspension.
Yeah, your suspension, okay.
and Chair, please indulge me because we're going to get to this. But I do think you've got a difficulty in the witness called Mr. Masango. We'll get into Susan Daniel's issue as well. The affidavit of Ms. Molefe says she went to Mr. Matona on the 11th of March before the meeting of the 9th. She then told Mr. Matona that I hear that we're going to be suspended today. Mr. Matona's response in Ms. Molefe's affidavit is that I know. I also heard from outsiders. Now, either Ms. Molefe is lying to the commission or Ms. Matona is lying to the commission. They can't both be right.
Can I assist you there, Mr. Koko, so that we can expedite it?
Yes.
Mr. Koko, Ms. Daniel says, in same light as Mr. Masango, after meeting with you at Melrose Arch, she called Den Marokana. She met with Den Marokana that evening, and Mr. Den Marokana called and met with Mr. Tsolofelo Molefe that same evening. That's why Ms. Tsolofelo Molefe would have known on the 11th.
Chair, Mr. Seleka is not assisting you. Let me repeat. Ms. Molefe got this from...
But let's start, you started off by saying you knew about your suspension.
but
Do you want to just finish that point?
No, but I'm finishing that point.
Yes.
But I'm finishing this point because it's important. Ms. Molefe was told by Dan, Mr. Marokane. That's correct. But after she's been told, in the morning of the 11th of March, she then approached Mr. Matona and she says, I hear that we are going to be suspended. Her affidavit does not say she told Mr. Matona that she had from Dan, but she has said it, so I can accept that she said she had it from Mr. Matona. She says Mr. Matona's response is that I know about the suspensions, right? So Mr. Matona, on the 11th of March, before the meeting of the 9th, he says to Ms. Molefe, I know about the suspensions from the outsiders. In his affidavit, Mr. Matona says, I only learned about the suspension when it was served to me after hours. So my submission to you is, I knew from Mr. Matona, and Ms. Molefe is correct when she says Mr. Matona told her before the meeting of 9 in the morning that there will be suspension.
Before the meeting of the 9th?
Before the meeting of 9 o'clock in the morning.
Of March?
Before the meeting of 11 March.
Yeah, before the meeting of the board on the 11th.
Yes.
Okay.
And remember, the suspensions were discussed in the board meeting of 1 o'clock after the ministers left.
Yes.
So Mr. Matona could not have had the benefit of that meeting to know that there will be suspensions. But Ms. Molefe says he had that benefit to know that there will be suspensions. And it's correct, because that's what he told me on the 8th of March in the evening. So I knew about the suspension, and I knew those from suspension from Mr. Matona, and I think Ms. Molefe's version is correct.
So are you saying that you only got to know about the fact that the other 3 executives would be suspended on the 11th?
That's correct, Chair.
But as far as your own suspension is concerned, you knew before the 11th?
I knew about the likelihood of my suspension and that of Mr. Matona from Mr. Matona on the 8th of March in the evening on the call that lasted more than 10 minutes. But he's been discussing it with me even on Saturday. And I said I will make the telephone records available.
But in terms of what you said, likelihood, so at that stage, there was no certainty that you were going to be suspended, but Mr. Matona was saying you and I
will most likely be suspended.
Will most likely be suspended.
Yes.
Okay, that's what you're talking about.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
But then that suspension...
With respect, Mr. Chairman, the point that the witness is making is that Mr. Matona, in this hearing, says that he only learnt of the suspensions eventually when he was suspended.
Yes.
He didn't know about it at all beforehand.
Yes.
Which the witness contests, because he said on the 8th, he was already told that most likely.
Yes.
The point is, though, making is that Ms. Jolofela Molefe has testified that in that morning, she was told by Mr. Matona, confirming that he knew about the suspension. That's the issue.
Okay. Okay. I guess let's go back to Mr. Salaga, your question to Mr. Koko about Mr. Masango's version about the meeting.
Mr. Masango,
of the 10th.
So I did not answer that. But
yes, you haven't answered that.
Yes.
Let's clarify for the purposes of the hearing. Your pre-knowledge of the suspension or likelihood of suspension relates to the unlawful instruction from Mr. Tsutsi.
Correct.
Yes. So it's not the type of suspension we are talking here, which the board ultimately effected, that 4 executives will be suspended. It's not that type.
Well, does the type matter? No, it doesn't to me.
Sorry?
The type of suspension and the reasons of suspensions were irrelevant to me. In my mind, the suspensions would occur because of Mr. Malisela. When it happened, it was sabotage, and
Yes.
it threw me out.
Yes. So I think Mr. Selega's point is the suspensions that were effected on the 11th, including your suspension,
I did not know of those suspensions.
was not said by the board to be connected with the Seitumo matter.
That's correct, and
Yes.
I did not know of that type of suspension.
Yes. Yeah.
That's right. So Mr. Masango then says, like Ms. Daniels, they go to Melrose Arch, they meet with you there. In the case of Ms. Daniels, is Mr. Salim Essa introducing himself as the advisor to the minister, saying 4 executives will be suspended. And in the case of Mr. Masango, it's you doing the talking and aided.
Take one at a time, Mr.
One at a
Selega.
time. Thank you, Chair.
Ms.
Let me
Daniels
stick
or
to,
Ms. Masango, finish with it.
yeah, let me stick to Mr. Masango. Mr. Masango, then he says you add that you will return. Furthermore, you say to Mr. Essa about Mr. Masango that he has the potential to act as a CEO. Now, but let's go to 3. 4 will be suspended, 3 will not return, but I will return.
Maybe let's start here. Mr. Koko, did you call Mr. Masango to a meeting at Melrose Arch with you on the 10th of March 2015?
Chairman, when I watched Mr. Masango's testimony, at a critical point when he was asked, what is your relationship with Mr. Koko, the TV went blank, so I did not catch his answer. But let me tell you this.
He said it was a good relationship.
Well, it was much more than that.
You called each other Maki.
It was much more than that.
Yes.
Mr. Masango, Gumakelwan. And because Gumakelwan, we call each other Maki.
Yes.
And not only that, his son is...
That's a neighbor in Zulu.
Yes, and his son is also Moses.
Yes.
So his son and his son looks after me. And at Eskom, I mentored Mr. Masango. I mentored Mr. Masango from being junior. During those days, positions at Eskom that Mr. Masango had were not applied for, they were appointed by the board, by Eskom. Wherever Mr. Masango went, I make sure that he gets appointed purely on competency. He was a general manager at Mpumalanga. He went to Kusile. I took him to the US for project management training. So we much more than Omakelwan.
Yes.
Right.
You come a long way.
We come a long way.
Yeah.
On the 10th of May, when I was running away from Mr. Tsotsi, I did not expect to see him at Megawatt Park because he was not based at Megawatt Park.
On the 10th of May 2015.
On the 10th of March 2015.
10th of March 2015.
Yes, I did not expect him at Megawatt Park.
Yes.
Because he's based on site.
Yes.
I saw him, I think we had small pleasantries.
Yeah.
I don't even recall.
And he was reporting to you at the time?
He was not reporting to me at the time. He was reporting to Mr. Marokani.
Yeah. But I thought he said you were acting on that day.
Mr. Marokani was on leave.
Yes.
And I don't remember, but I will not quibble with it. I think I was acting with I was acting on Mr. Marokani's position. Then I left to Melrose Arch.
Yes.
And there's no suspicions why I ended up there. I just liked the place.
Sorry?
There is no suspicion why I ended up at Melrose Arch.
Yes.
I just liked the ambience there.
Okay.
I still do.
Yes.
When I was at Megawatt Park, and my telephone records will show you, I phoned Suzanne, I phoned Abraham Masango, I phoned Nonkululeko Veleti. Those are my people that were very close to me. They were not only other people. I did not call people at I phoned Vusimbo Weni.
Yes.
Because I was traumatized, and I called people that I thought were at Megawatt Park.
Yes.
Because I wanted them to tell me what's going on there. Because I expected commotion on that day. I spoke to Mr. Masango.
Why were you expecting commotion on the
Because
10th?
I was told, that's why I ran out of the office.
You were told?
I was told that we will be suspended on that day. That's why I ran out of the office so that I don't meet Mr. Tsotsi.
Yes, yes, yes. But what about what would have caused the commotion?
Well, typically when you suspend me and suspend the CE, wet flies and news fly, people know.
Okay, so yeah, you thought that the two of you, Mr. Matona and yourself, were going to be suspended.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So I phoned him. I says, Maki, where are you? And then he told me he's in a meeting at Megawatt Park. And he was busy. He was not available the whole day. I can tell you now, with unequivocally, that I never met Mr. Masango at Melrose Arch. I phoned Mr. Masango towards 5 o'clock. I was driving towards, and my records will again show that, I was driving to meet Mr. and Ms. Nonkululeko Veleti. And he says, I can come to where you are, Maki. I said, no, Maki, don't worry, because I'm going to meet Ms. Veleti. So there's no need. And my suspicion is that you are probably close to where we live, Witbank. So you don't need to come back. My relationship with him would have been such that if I called him that evening to come, because I'm in trouble, chances are he would have come. But I didn't meet him there. So I can tell you now, I did not meet Mr. Masango at Melrose Arch. I talked to him towards 5 o'clock, and I cut his call short because I did not know where to locate Ms. Veleti. I had to call Ms. Veleti. So again, my telephone records will show that. The problem you face, and I caught that part. When Mr. Masango was asked, have you met Mr. Issa? His answer was, I don't remember, but when Mr. Koko said we must meet Salim Issa, I refused. If you go to the affidavit before you in this commission of Ms. Goodsell, Ms. Goodsell says in his affidavit before you, I was introduced to Mr. Masango by Salim Issa in the office. So this story that I know the office, there was no label, unless Ms. Goodsell is lying. Ms. Goodsell says Mr. Masango was introduced to me by Salim Issa in the office. So my proposition is that these two have a relationship.
Does she give a date, Mr. Koko?
He says it was December.
Of which year?
2015.
Oh, but we are talking March now.
No, all that I'm putting to you is there is a relationship between Salim Issa and Mr. Masango that is concealing from this commission.
Which preceded 10 March or which came
Well,
after?
the meeting...
Or you don't know?
The meeting that is referenced, that is before you in affidavit, is post-March. But I can't rule out that their relationship predates
10th of March.
10th of March. The question is, why didn't Mr. Masango tell you when he was asked to meet Mr. Issa? But that's one part. The second part about Mr. Masango is that he's a difficult witness.
Is it?
Difficult witness for you. Because in Parliament, with Ms. Daniels, he says, and Ms. Daniels says, I worked together with Ms. Daniels to get rid of Mr. Koko at Eskom because he was corrupt. He says so in his telling the commission. What he did not tell you is that he's out on bail, 300,000 bail, on charges of fraud and corruption that were initiated by me. And when I did that, and there's another famous meeting of the 2nd of March 2017, again, please go and listen to the audios, when Mr. Masango wrote a whistleblower report after I confronted him with evidence that was made available to me, and I removed him from his post. He responded by authoring a whistleblower report of which I was charged on. And Mr. Seleka was quite excited about it when he talked about it. But the fact is, nothing happened to Mr. Masango since I made the information available to the board of Eskom, and I know they've opened the case and nothing happened, but this is what happened. By grace, I was approached by Mr. Paul O'Sullivan. And Mr. Paul O'Sullivan says, I've watched your tweets. I followed your tweets. You may have information that I can use. What is going on at Eskom? I said, Mr. Paul O'Sullivan, the criminals at Eskom who are being listened to, who are darlings of the media, who are on the Koko hunt, does not matter the evidence that they have. They are on the Koko hunt and they've been given the benefit. And we can go into the Koko hunt. I've got a version of why there's a Koko hunt. Mr. Paul O'Sullivan took the documents. I gave them to my attorney, and my attorney can make them available to, including the bank statements. Mr. Paul O'Sullivan came back to me the following day in an email, which my counsel said, he says, Mr. Koko, I've looked at this evidence against Mr. Masango and others. I don't know why they are still here, but I can bet you, now that I have it, they will not spend Christmas outside. On the 18th of March, Mr. Paul O'Sullivan called me and says, your friends are being arrested based on the information that you have submitted. On the 2nd of March, 2017, not only did I give the board that dossier, but I also gave the board the names of the people at Kusile that I think were in a corrupt relationship with Mr. Masango. And one of them was Ms. Nhlanhla Krai. She's no longer working for Eskom, I don't know why. I was not surprised when I saw her evidence with Mr. Masango joining the Koko hunt. For the record, Chair, I've never met Mr. Masango with Salim Issa at Milrose Ash. That meeting did not happen. Mr. Masango is a potential criminal and will end up in jail.
Well, if Mr. Masango, if there are allegations of corruption against Mr. Masango in relation to Eskom, make that information available to the Commission. So if it has not already been made.
Chairman, in my letter to you of last night, I quibble that the allegations of corruption against Mr. Masango are common cause, are common knowledge. And one would have thought that a commission of inquiry that is set up to investigate foreign corruption in state-owned companies would not have missed Mr. Masango's allegations of corruption. Secondly, yes. One would have thought that Mr. Masango would not have come to this commission and escape being asked about his pending charges.
Well, it helps if those who have the information facilitate by giving the information, because of course, you know, the levels of corruption in South Africa are so high. If the commission was going to follow every allegation, it would be here for 100 years. So if those who have got the information finish it, it makes it much more easy.
Mr. Chairman, with all respect, there was a whole television program about these events, about Mr. Frans Slakudi, Mr. Masango, 60 million bribe money going through the account, some of which went to Mr. Masango. This is, if you go onto Google, it's immediately available. It must be available to the investigators, but it isn't put before you. That's the issue what we're raising in the letter that we wrote you yesterday.
No, that's fine. All I'm simply
it is unbelievable.
I'm saying is, we have asked, I have asked since 2018, invited everybody who has information about corruption to make the information available. Of course, Somebody might have watched the program, they might not have watched, somebody might have read some article in the newspaper, but as I say, in the end, even within the SOEs, we might not be able to follow up everything because that might just need a lot of time. But it helps if somebody who has knowledge of something like that prepares a statement or whatever and finishes it to us.
With respect, Chair, the question that I would respectfully submit that you should be asking is why your investigators are unaware of things that are public knowledge.
No,
And it is not drawn to your attention.
No,
That is the question that we submit is the relevant question.
No, I hear what you're saying, but what I'm saying is, surely there are even some things that we might be aware of, but we just don't have the time and capacity to check with every SOE, every government department, every municipality. So it's important that those who have got information furnish it to us. There is a lot of information that they get, which has been brought before us. But if we had all the capacity we wished, we would be able to collect everything. But let's not spend too much time on it.
But
it will be made available to us.
The issue, though, again, that we pointed out in the letter to you, is that the witness, like Mr. Koko, is asked by you to direct his attention at very specific subjects.
Sorry?
The directives given to witnesses, including Mr. Koko, are to the effect that they have to direct their attention and discuss very particular aspects, which they do.
Yes, but then...
And now, bear with me, and that's why we wrote to you.
Yes.
That's why we wrote to you, is to question, why is it that something that's in the public domain very clearly is not raised before you when that witness testifies? We find it totally dismaying.
Hang on, Mr. Berry, you have made the point. I have said, or let me say, when we issue a 10-6 directive, that's usually towards the end. Much earlier, I said an invitation has been made from 2018. So Mr. Koko could have responded to that invitation to say, the chairperson of the commission says, anyone who has got information about allegations of state capture, corruption and fraud in the public sector, bring it. But I'm saying the fact that he might not have brought it forward then doesn't mean that we should not ask him to give it to us now. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
But again, with due respect, how could Mr. Koko, in his wildest dream, have thought that your investigators, full-time people, Eskom work stream, would not miss, the one corruption case that goes to court.
We are not going
and they will not inform you of it.
We are not going to resolve
There is something
this one.
wrong.
Yeah. Mr. Selega?
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
We are at 18 minutes to 9.
Yeah.
I think we'll stop at 9. Let's continue.
Yes, Mr. Koko, there's one thing I didn't pick up from the testimony of Mr. Masango at the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee. You say he said, I worked with Ms. Daniels to get rid of Mr. Koko.
That's correct, Chair. So if you listen to the video, you will, on both Mr. Koko, I beg your pardon. On both Ms. Daniels and Mr. Masango, unequivocally, we worked together with the journalist to get rid of Mr. Koko because he's corrupt.
Yeah. Okay, but then when do they work together to get rid of you?
They testified at the parliamentary committee. And it is
It's 2018.
2018.
Oh, okay.
It is in that parliamentary committee, which pained me, Chair, because I was involved in the whistleblower document. When it is in that inquiry that Mr. Masango actually said, I actually was the author of the whistleblower report. I thought, my goodness.
But, yes, but
Well, let me put this to you, Mr. Koko, so that I hear what you have to say. You have said that Mr. Masango, Ms. Daniels, Ms. Valenti were people who were all close to you.
That's correct.
2015.
Correct.
At least. Now, those, two of those people, Ms. Daniels and Mr. Masango, have both said that you called them to a meeting in Melrose Arch separately. They met with you and you were with Mr. Salim Essa and you told them about the impending suspensions of the executives. Now, as Mr. Selega said, Ms. Daniels says it was Mr. Salim Essa who was talking most of the time. Mr. Masango says it was you who was talking when you met him. And then Ms. Valenti has said that on the same day, on the 10th, you called her. And if I recall correctly, she said you called her wanting her to come to a meeting at Melrose Arch. But she did not, because she wasn't allowed because she was busy with something else.
strategy session.
She says later on, I think she says she met with you and you asked for her CV, which she says you had asked for during the day, but she thought she had sent it to you, but you had not received it. And she said you met and she asked you what this is about, or you shared the information. Whether she asked you or you volunteered it, I'm not sure, that there were to be suspensions and you wanted her CV and said she could be asked to act in one of the positions.
Chair, in the position.
Sorry?
In the position of the FD.
Yes, in the position of the FD. Now, on your own version, at that time, you had a good relationship with these people. Now, according to Mr. Dan Marokane and Ms. Daniels, I think the two of them had a meeting that day or that evening where Ms. Daniels told Mr. Dan Marokane about her meeting with you and Mr. Salim Essa. According to Mr. Masango and Ms. Cry, Mr. Masango told Ms. Cry either on the same day or the following morning about this meeting that he says he had had with you and Mr. Salim Essa. Ms. Cry confirms that. And then Ms. Molefe says she was told by Ms. Valenti about your call during the day to her. Now, if these three people were close to you, why would they all lie about you having met with them on this day at a time when they had a good relationship with you?
Chairman, they're not lying to me at the time when they had a good relationship with me.
Sorry?
They are not lying about me when they had a relationship with me. They are lying now.
Yes.
When we don't have a relationship. And, you know, I say...
So are you saying, I'm sorry, I'm interrupting you. So you are saying that it's something that they conspired, concocted
exactly.
about after the relationship between you and them had soured.
Exactly, and I'll tell you, let's start with Ms. Daniels. I go into details with Ms. Daniels. I even mentioned the time and the calls she make and the messages, text messages. I'm surprised that I've not asked. I guess Mr. Seleka will ask me
Well, we are not done yet. Yeah.
So I mentioned from the 23rd of March, after Minister Brown issued a statement post Brian Molefe matter, how Ms. Daniel came to my house telling me that I know you are the friend of the president. I know the president listens to me. I know the minister has an ear for you. Please stop, go intervene and ask them to stop throwing me under the bus. Because according to her, both the board and the minister are putting the 30 million Molefe matter on her. I said to her, Mr. Daniels, I can't. I am on suspension. If I had the influence of the minister and the president, I would not be sitting at home. She broke down and cried in my house. She sent me text messages and say, hell will break loose, there will be no winners. And at the parliamentary committee, again, it was very painful, Chair, when she told the parliamentary committee that Mr. Koko is a brazen thief and has caused a theft of 5 billion rands at Eskom. When she was party to all these transactions. But what was most important, the only joy I had is that she testified before me. So I knew what she was saying. And then I went to the records, to the documents on the trillion matter. You know, Chairman, one of the things you have to deal with, and I don't want to raise eyebrows. You know, people are out there and say the judges are captured. And they make an example of the North Gauteng High Court. I don't buy into that story. But one of the things I am hoping and praying that this commission does is to deal with the decision of the North Gauteng High Court that found that Mr. Koko was tasked on the 6th of July to negotiate the contract with McKinsey when I was sitting at home. I am baffled that 3 senior judges of North Gauteng High Court make the conclusion that while I was sitting at home on suspension, I was asked to negotiate the contract with Sweden. They could have only done that. And their first paragraph says that they were state capture. They were caught up in the state capture theory. But, and they relied on the work that Susan did with Bomengil Filen. When I wrote my reply, I went to my records. I took out the motivation that was brought to me by Ms. Daniels. And in that motivation, and in the parliamentary inquiry, Ms. Seleka, you may want to pick that. I say it's Edwin, it's actually Ms. Daniels. They brought to me and say, the board has approved the settlement agreement with McKinsey for 460 million rand. And please approve it so that we can pay. It did not make sense to me, McKinsey and Trillion. It did not make sense to me. I refused, I sent it back to her. Chairman, now during the commission, I had the privilege of listening to the audio recordings of the meeting of the 8th of February. It's shocking and it is going to make you fall off your chair. The submission made by Susan Daniels and the project manager, Prishka Venda, in 2 minutes, without paperwork, the board approves 460 million rands payment to McKinsey. And then when he goes to Parliament, he says, it's Mr. Koko. She did not think at that point, she did not think and anticipate at that point that I will have the benefits of the audios that proves that she was lying with her teeth. She concocted that story in Parliament because the facts, and please go in, I've got those minutes, I will send them to your committee. You will see the person that's making that submission is Susan Daniels. That leads to the 460 million approval. When she is confronted, Mr. Vanara took my affidavit to her and say, Ms. Daniels, Mr. Koko has a different version. And Mr. Koko's version is that you actually did the recommendation for the settlement with McKinsey and she refused to sign, and here is your submission. Do you know what Ms. Daniels said? She says, in hindsight, I had a lapse of mental concentration. This is the weakness that he's talking about, that is capable of fabricating things and evidence is before you.
Yes.
Ms. Nonkululeko Veleki, in her affidavit, she says, I met Mr. Koko. She told me she will be suspended with other executives. And then she says, Mr. Koko, and again, I'm inviting you to go and read it. She says, Mr. Koko did not tell me who other executives will be suspended. She writes it that way. When she sits here and she looks at you, she looks at your inclination, what you want to hear, and she thinks you want to hear that I said Ms. Molefe will be suspended. She says so. If that's what I said, why did she say the opposite thing in her affidavit? I mean, these are the type of weakness. I have a lot of respect for Ms. Nonkululeko Veleki, but I don't understand how can she write in her affidavit that Mr. Koko did not, let me quote. I've written down. She says, she told me, Mr. Koko told me that he would be suspended along with others, with other few executives. He did not indicate who the other executive to be suspended were. How do we then move? How does a chartered accountant move from this, and I'm looking for audit trail, to then coming back and sitting here and say, Mr. Koko told me that the FD will be suspended. I heard when...
Sorry, I don't think she said that.
No, she said, I've got it, I can quote it again. Let me quote it. And that's you talking. You're saying to her, so he said he was going to be suspended, and he said there was a possibility that the financial director would be suspended as well. That's you, putting it back to her. And she says, yes, Chair, and other executives. That's a quote verbatim from a transcript. How do we then move from saying, Mr. Koko did not tell me who else is going to be suspended, to coming here and responding to you and say, yes, Mr. Koko said the finance director will be suspended. It's unlike Ms. Nonkululeko Veleki. I overheard, and I may be wrong, that there was a supplementary affidavit which was not sent to me, and I don't know what she said about that. But I'm quoting verbatim, I'm not...
That's fine, sir. Now you say it was only after your relationship with them had soured that they said they had this meeting with, in the case of Mr. Masango and Ms.
Yes, Chair, I don't have a soured relationship with Ms. Nonkululeko Veleki.
Oh, okay.
I don't have a very soured relationship.
Okay.
I am still baffled how she responds the way she does. With time, I will know.
Yes, but there is not, your relationship with her is fine.
My relationship with her, as far as I know, and the last time I met her, we remain family friends.
Okay, all right. So it's just Ms. Daniels and Mr. Masango.
Yes, and all this, all other people are quoting this too.
Yes, yes.
Now, the important part, Chair, that I apologize. You know, there is these 4 letters of suspension that were written on the 10th of March, 7 o'clock, from the properties. This property says these suspension letters was originated by Suzanne and edited by Salim Essa. When, in one of the emails, and I watched it, and this I found quite interesting, Mr. Seleke put it to Dr. Ngubane. It was an email that originated from outside Eskom, allegedly, and then it was about suspensions of Mail and Guardian, Business Day, City Press, which the board acted on. Mr. Silike said somebody shouted at him from the back. And then he says, the properties of this document says the document was initiated by Den Manja and edited by Salim Issa. That was Mr. Silike. Now, and nobody pushed back that you can't rely on the metadata of this document. The commission seems to have taken a view that says you can rely on the metadata. Now, here is a document, 4 documents written by Suzanne. The metadata shows that she is the originator and the editor is Suzanne Daniels. In the meeting, in the alleged meeting with Suzanne Daniels, with Salim Issa, she says, I was told that 4 executives will be suspended. I was told there will be an inquiry. She also says something else she's never said before, even at Parliament, that they will not return. That was new. When you asked her, did you put it in Parliament inquiry? She said yes, and she lied. It was not there. She also says, Mr. Silike put it to her, were you asked to assist Salim Issa or Mr. Koko with the suspension letters? She says no. So if you can rely on the metadata, as Mr. Silike relied on the Den Manja, Salim Issa, and you rely on the metadata, what are these suspension letters doing on a computer? Now, Chair, let me tell you a story. When I was suspended with the 20 info portal address, which shocked me, I took documents out of, I went to look into document, I picked up an email. This email was from Suzanne's Gmail address to info portal address. I said to my counsel, you know this info portal address, I know where it comes from. And now it's my baby. And Chairman, it will come and I tell you, I have not communicated with Salim Issa on emails. I never knew Salim Issa in 2015. I gave to my counsel, I says, go to Eskom, show Eskom this letter. Let them go to Ms. Daniels' computer. They will find more. Ms. Daniels, when she testified here, she says Eskom relied on discredited Mr. Koko. But the fact is they took a computer, they imaged it and they found more. I'm inviting you, Chairman. You've got the imaged computer of Ms. Daniels. You will most likely find those 4 suspension letters on his computer. And the question is why, if he was not asked to assist Ms. Salim Issa. I can tell you now, like Mr. Masango, there is a relationship Ms. Daniels is concealing with Ms. Issa.
Now, I wanted to put this to you to hear what you have to say. There are these other people who say they were told by Ms. Daniels, Ms. Masango, Ms. Valet, Mr. Masango, Ms. Daniels, Ms. Valet, either on the same day, namely the 10th, or the following day, in the case of Mr. Masango telling Mr. Den Morgane, I think a week later or a few weeks later. But at that time, even with Mr. Masango and Ms. Daniels, on your own version, your relationship had not soured.
That's correct, Chair.
Yes. So why would they have decided to concoct, as you put it, a story at that time about having met you at Melrose Arch with Mr. Issa? Because at that time, your relationship with them was fine.
So, knowing what I do now, I can't dispute that Suzanne on her own met Salim Issa. I can't dispute that.
Yes.
And the suspension letter the 4 suspension letters that has properties that are originated by Suzanne, edited by Salim Essa, points to a relationship on the day that dated the 10th of March. When Ms. Daniels was asked, were you ever asked to write suspension letters? Her response was, I wrote a template, and Ms. Koko may have taken my template and given it to Salim Essa. Chairman, I can tell you now, suspensions in Eskom is the custodians of the industrial relations. There is no template at Eskom. There is no such a template. She was lying. She knows what happened on the day. She must explain herself. What are these documents doing? Why are the property says written by Suzanne Daniels, edited by Salim Essa? They must have been in contact with her and Salim Essa on that day. Go to a computer, it's imaged. My computer gets, you know, what hurts me is that at every second chance, at every first opportunity, people go to my emails. People go to my computers. Why can't people do the same with others? Why do I have to write a letter to you to say, Mr. Chairman, please, I don't have the investigative capacity that you have. Please go to Mr. Suzanne Daniels. Here are 4 suspension letters. You will find, and that's my proposition, that Suzanne on the day, he may have met Ms. Essa.
Yes, let's assume that she had met Mr. Essa on her own, without you.
Yes.
My question is, at that time, she has a good relationship with you. The two of you are close. Why would she tell Mr. Den Morgana, I think on the same day, I don't know, the same day or the following day?
Same day.
Yeah, same day, that she had this meeting with you and Mr. Salim Essa at Melrose Arch. Why would she falsely put you into a meeting in which you were not there?
Because she met Salim Essa. She had the urge to go and meet them. They were also friends, but she has to find a link. She can't use a name.
But you see, at that time, if she had gone to, and she had met Mr. Essa on her own, she had no reason to tell Mr. Den Morgana about that meeting at all. She could have kept that secret, or she didn't have any reason. She says she told him, as I understand the position.
Chairman, there are many things you can't explain about Suzanne. Let me give you another example. Mr. Koko called me to come with, to go and meet the minister to talk about independent power producers. We ended up at Melrose Arch. She kept me outside. She had a meeting with Mr. Salim Essa. Mr. Salim Essa came out after the meeting and said, tell your boss to stop tweeting. And then that's it, come, let's go. How do you explain that? How do you explain it? There are just too many things that Ms. Daniels says and put across that I find them difficult to explain.
Let's go to Mr. Masango. Hang on before here. Let's go to Mr. Masango. Again, is somebody very close to you at that time? The relationship has not soured. He is your marquee. Or as you put it, much more than marquee. The two of you are close. He tells Ms. Cry, either on the same day or the following morning, that he had this meeting with you. I think in Ms. Cry says in her statement or affidavit, if I'm not mistaken, he said he had a meeting with you with a short man, a short Indian man or something like that. Now, why would he falsely implicate you in this meeting
Chairman,
at that time when the relationship between the two is still fine?
Chairman, I dispute that conversation happened then. I dispute that completely. That discussion was concocted after I put Ms. Cry and Mr. Masango's letter for corruption investigations. It happened only after that. I dispute that it happened then. I can tell you I dispute it. This is a story that was done by both potential criminals working together against a complainant.
When did you lay a complaint about them, a criminal complaint?
It must have been the meeting that was set up by the board. I mean, and this is another point, Chairman. This is another point you need to take very seriously. I have information of corruption. I take immediate action. I remove people that I think are corrupted. I remove from the scene of crime. He conspires with the board, and then the board.
Who is that now?
Mr. Masango.
Okay.
The board calls me to suspend me because I suspended Mr. Masango. I allegedly suspended Mr. Masango. They called me and said to them, it was not a nice meeting. I said to Mr. Dr. Ngubane, if you suspend me today for the way I've dealt with Mr. Masango, I'm going straight to the police station. You are defending corruption. And then they backed off. Then they became so nice afterwards. I gave them the document that says, instead of suspending me, here is the dossier. These people must be arrested. That meeting was on the 2nd of March, 2017.
Yes, okay. So ultimately your criminal complaint that you laid, if that's what you did against Ms. Masango, I don't know whether him alone or Ms. Cry as well, that happened in 2017, 2018?
The criminal complaint was opened by Eskom, not by me personally.
Oh, okay, all right. But
on the basis of the information I gave Eskom.
yes, you gave them that information
in 2017 March.
2017 March. So before that, before 2017 March, your relationship with Mr. Masango was fine.
Chair, my relationship with Mr. Masango, let me tell you the story. Let me put the story on the table. I was everybody knows at Eskom that me and Abraham, in the township language, they say we are tight.
Yeah, you're very close.
Yes. I got a document from somebody who says, listen, there's a big corruption happening at Kusile. I will not tell you much, but here's a document.
This is when now? Which year?
2017.
Yeah. Okay.
2017 towards December.
Okay.
No, 2016 towards December.
Okay.
I took this document, and after looking at this document, I realized I can't sit and do nothing. I have no reason to believe that what I'm reading here is true, but I can't sit and do nothing. So I called Abraham, Mr. Masango, I beg your pardon. I said, Maki, me and you are friends. I think I know your moral compass. I have a difficulty, but I can't ignore this. And what I'm going to do, Mr. Maki, I'm going to remove you from your position as a group executive, group capital. I'm going to remove you there. I'm going to put you in my office. And these following people at Kusile that are implicated, I'm going to remove them as well. We're going to appoint a new person in your position, and we're going to replace these people at Kusile. The new people who come in must investigate this. And if there's merit in this, then we deal with it. That's what I did.
Yeah. That's 2017.
2017. I also said to him, 2016 December. 2016 December. I also said to him, listen, to take away the noise, I will also send you to Harvard for advanced management training. And when you are done at Harvard, I'm going to send you to Lufthansa to learn best maintenance practices. That's how much I valued the guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he then decided he's going to fight back.
Okay, let's hang on. That's 2017. I'm in 2015.
Yes.
Now, in 2015, your relationship with Mr. Masango is fine.
Yes.
Now, he has testified, or Mr. Den Morokane has testified that, I think it was still during March 2015, that Mr. Masango told him,
On the 14th, Chairperson.
told him that about this meeting that he says he had with you and Mr. Salim Essa at Melrose Arch, and Mr. Den Morokane has confirmed that, if I recall correctly.
Chairman, Chairman, he told Mr. Marokane, he says, and you repeated, Mr. Silika repeated, did you tell Mr. Marokane about the meeting in Melrose Arch that said 4 people will be suspended and 4 people will not return? He said, no. Chair, his affidavit does not say the 2. Mr. Masango's affidavit does not say, I met Dan on the 14th of March, and I told him that I met Salim Issa, and Salim Issa said 4 executives will be suspended, and they will not, it does not say that. So I dispute that he says that.
Okay.
But what about what Mr. Den Marokane says? About that, about what Mr. Masango, what he says Mr. Masango told him?
I don't know what Mr. Marokane says. I've not seen Mr.
You didn't get his
I've not
affidavit?
seen Mr. Marokane's
Yes.
affidavit. All what I know is Mr. Marokane denies having such a discussion with Mr. Masango. And the only reason I know that is because I listened to Mr. Sileka. Sileka.
Yes. And then, of course, you have Miss Valetti, and you say your relationship with her, as far as you know, is still fine. What do you say about what she said, you said to her on the 10th when you called her? And she says you called her for a meeting at Melrose Arch. If I recall correctly, you asked for her CV. And then, of course, the 2 of you, she said, met later in the day. So what's your version of it?
Chairman, I never, everybody that I called on the day, I told them where I was. So it's no...
So you have no issue with that?
It's no issue. I told them, I did not call her to come to Melrose Arch.
Yes.
I did not.
But you told her you were...
Yeah, everybody that on that day, anybody that I called, I told her, him or her, my difficulties and where I was and where I was working on that day. When I met Miss Valetti, and I still say I don't remember the restaurant we met. She says McDonald's or KFC. I won't quibble with that. And by the way, it was not a short meeting. We did not have a short meeting.
You did not have a short meeting?
We did not have a short meeting. She says so. It was not a short meeting.
Oh, right. Yeah, I think she said maybe it might have taken 20 minutes.
It was not a short meeting, that I can tell you. I had long discussions with her. She was extremely sympathetic with me. She was saddened. And then she says to me, interestingly, I am looking for a job. My CV is ready. I'm sending my CVs around. I will send it to you. If you can help me, that's fine. It was not the first time me and Ms. Valetti had a discussion about the CV. It was not the first time. She has sent her CVs to me before when I nominated her to be Executive of the Year, and she was an Executive of the Year. She's an extremely competent, upright person. That's Ms. Valetti that I know. So I called her. I told her I'm at Melrose Arch. I actually thought she's at Megawat Park because she was senior enough. Now, she also says I told her that she will act on the FD's position. She's mistaken. Ms. Valetti was she set up the shared services for Eskom, which is for transactional activities, but it's mainly commercial. I was the CE, I was the GE of commercial. So when I told her that I will most likely be suspended, and she says, so, you know, scenarios, who will act? I said, well, who is the most senior commercial person at Eskom now, as you speak, in rank? It was her. So you will not have a difficulty if it's merit to say, who is the next commercial person to step in? She set up such services. I think she had graduated to go to do what we call business productivity workshop. So she was a natural candidate. And I said, well, who knows, you might be the next in line. I said it in jest. When she sat here, and in my affidavit, I says we were shocked, and she denies being shocked. That hurt me, because I met her eventually, and we sat and said, you know, when we met and joked about it, we never thought it would happen.
Yes.
Sorry.
Now, yes.
Chair, I missed, what were they joking about?
No, I'm saying, when I told her that I was most likely going to be suspended, in that discussion, she raised who are they going to get to act in these things? I says, I don't know.
In your position?
Yes, in my position. Yes, in my position. I don't know, but you might act, because I didn't even tell her why, but in my mind, the most senior commercial person.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Chair, I hope you don't forget your question.
Yeah, no. I won't.
May I follow up, or should I allow you
Can I,
first?
let me finish and then you can follow up. With regard to Ms. Valenti, you have no reason that she would deliberately falsely implicate you in asking her to come to a meeting because in Melrose Arch, because your relationship was fine and it's still fine.
Certainly.
She must be mistaken.
Certainly she's mistaken.
Yeah.
She's mistaken that I called her to Melrose Arch. I did tell her.
Yes, that you were there.
Where you were. And when I was telling her, Chairman, she was very impatient. And after reading her affidavit, I now understand why she was impatient, because she was moving from lunch to the meeting with the team, and now it makes sense. And that's why I said, no, listen, I will call you later in the evening, we'll meet later in the evening, I will tell you what I think is actually happening to me. But I think she's mistaken to say, I called her to Melrose Arch. And I think she's mistaken to say, to create an impression, to say I asked for a CV. First, I didn't even receive that CV. She said she sent it, I didn't receive it. But she told me that she's on the lookout, and she's sending CVs, and she will send the CVs to me, and if I can assist in my connections, please do so. I said, that's fine. I don't recall seeing the CV, because the following day I was out.
At the meeting that she says the two of you had, I think, which you admit you had,
Yes.
did she
I
not
said
give
it,
you
by
a
the way,
CV?
it's not her who said the meeting. It's
Sorry?
me who, I told the commission that I had a meeting with her.
No, I think she also said
She confirms it.
Oh,
It's
well,
not it's not vice
I
versa.
might not have seen whatever you had
She
put
confirms
here.
it.
Yeah, but did she not give you her CV at that meeting?
No.
Because
said
I think she said she
said she
gave-
sent it,
Yeah.
but I don't recall ever.
Well, she said she thought she had sent it during the day.
Yes.
But she said when she met with you in the evening,
She sent
she
it.
gave.
Yeah, and I'm saying
You don't remember?
and the reason I don't remember having it is because the following day I was out.
Okay.
I was out of the
okay,
system.
Okay. Now you have said that you in your affidavit you did meet with Miss Susan Daniels at the restaurant in Melrose Arch.
That's correct.
But you have said you didn't have a meeting with her with Mr. Salim Essa.
That's correct.
Yes. did you remain in Melrose Arch for quite long after she had your meeting with her at the restaurant had
That's correct.
finished? Yes.
That's
yes.
correct.
Okay. Mr. Slicker. Oh.
Time up.
Yeah, no, we've got to adjourn. It's
Yeah.
25:09. But
Yes.
maybe you had one or two questions.
Yes, Chair, thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Koko, I see that you emphasize that things are not in somebody's affidavit like Ms. Veleti saying she would act in the position of FD or that the FD will also be suspended, which I think is implicit in saying she will act in the position of FD.
No, it's not, it's not implicit, Chair.
But there's a number of things. Now, in regard to Ms. Veleti, you are saying, she said, I'm looking for a job, my CV is ready, I've been searching, I've been distributing it, but it's nowhere in your affidavit. Can you explain that part?
Chairman.
Now, I'm concentrating on
No, yes.
Ms. Veleti. Number two, I said in jest that you might act in my position. It's nowhere in your affidavit. She is mistaken that I have asked her for a CV. She was the one giving me the CV. It's nowhere in your affidavit.
Chairman, I think Mr. Seleka is probably trying to mislead you.
It's not a mislead.
Are all of these things in your affidavit?
Yeah.
Are they in
Chairman,
your affidavit? Yeah.
These issues came after my affidavit. I've not responded to that affidavit. So they could not have been. They could not have been because this affidavit came after. Look at the dates, and he must tell you the dates.
Sorry, Mr. Koko.
It came after the 1st of, that affidavit came after the 1st of September. My affidavit responding to these issues was after the 1st of September.
Well, it's not going to be, we are not done, so we'll have to come,
Yeah, but it's simple.
back.
But it's simple.
Chair,
Chair.
let me- no.
Look at the 1st of September. I can tell you now, and
Yeah.
I confirm to you now, that Ms. Nonkululeko Veleti's affidavit that she's referring, Mr. Seleka is referring to, only came in response to my 1st of September affidavit.
Yes.
And
Tell
I've
the
not responded
chairperson.
to it.
Okay, all right.
Mr. Koko, tell the chairperson that after the date of the 7th of September 2020, which is Ms. Veleti's
You're talking about the
affidavit,
22nd affidavit.
you filed an affidavit of the 22 September 2020.
Yes.
And you say in your affidavit, I do in some places herein elaborate on what I stated in my previous affidavit or refer to the same facts differently. By this time, you have Ms. Veleti's affidavit, and here you're saying you could elaborate or refer to the same facts differently,
Yeah.
but you didn't incorporate what you are telling the chairperson now.
Yeah, Chair, that was for me, not the focus of, the commission gave me 3 directives. So I responded on the 1st of September. My directive of my submissions of the 22nd of September was mainly focused on the issues that I was asked that were due on the 22nd of September. I dealt with other issues that were obvious. And we've said in my, and this is a crux here, because that was 4 o'clock in the morning. We said in the affidavit of the 22nd, we will put a supplementary affidavit. We said so. And in the supplementary affidavit, we were going to deal with these things. We told Mr. Seleka that we were going to put a supplementary affidavit.
Is that supplementary affidavit the one that was put up today?
No, the supplementary affidavit that was put today was to deal with
Correct certain things.
Council thought that the errors that were there are not befitting his status.
Yeah, but then if there was an intention in September to put up a supplementary affidavit, why is the supplementary affidavit not, why has it not been put up by the 4th or 3rd of December?
Chair, it's a timing issue. It's a timing issue between me and my counsel.
Oh, okay, okay. I think we'll,
Can I end with
Yeah.
this, Chair? Because in addition to this, Chair, Ms. Koko, you would have received a Rule 3.3 notice in regard to Ms. Veleti on the 28th of September 2020, that she's going to testify on the 7th of October 2020. And that rule notice tells you you could bring an affidavit, you could come and cross-examine this witness, so you could have dealt with her evidence even on the basis of a 3.3 notice.
Certainly, Chair. I received 3.3 notices. Ms. Krai was supposed to have testified, and I received it. There's just too many. And I have not responded on them because I need to sit with my counsel to do that, and we're just not finding time to do that. But I can tell you now, my counsel and I will put in a supplementary affidavit to deal with all these affidavits that we have not dealt with. There are issues of Gert Opperman, who came here and misled you that I phoned her when my
yes, let's not go into
so those are
other matters.
you can take me to task.
Yeah.
That those are 6 months old. I've not responded to them, but they fall in the same category.
Yeah. Okay, I think we'll have to adjourn now.
Yes.
Mr. Koko is coming back on the 11th, is that right?
On the 11th,
On the
next week,
11th,
Friday.
yeah. I think that well, I guess you'll apply your mind to the question whether probably you should finish first the evidence relating to the suspensions before going into other matters, so that we know we are done with the suspensions. Yeah. Okay, all right. We are going to adjourn now. I take this opportunity to thank everybody for staying until this time. Thank you, Mr. Koko. Thank you, Mr. Berry, and your instructing attorneys. Thank you, Mr. Sileka. Thank you, everybody, your team, the staff. Thank you very much for staying till this time. We are trying to do as much as possible so that we finish the work of the commission within the time that we are given. Thank you very much. You have something to say, Mr. Berry?
Mr. Chair, very, very well for my learned friend to take the witness to task regarding the affidavit. You know, we put together, under time pressure from you and from the Commission, 148-page document within a very short period of time. My client was ill last week, we couldn't meet. Now we're taking to task, now that we should have said more, and there are limits to what extent one can go into the detail in these circumstances. So all I can say is, well, you know, have a heart. You know. There are limits about what can be put on paper. But if you really want a 1,000-page affidavit, then we can supply it to you.
Yeah.
But then we can't do it by the 11th of December.
Thank you very much.
If we have to deal with every little point,
Yeah.
then we can do so.
Yeah.
But I don't think we're going to endear ourselves to you, sir.
Yeah. Well, it's important issues and relevant issues. Thank you very much to everybody. We are going to adjourn for the day, and then I will have a hearing tomorrow relating to what we were doing during the day, money flows in regard to Estina. This is just for the benefit of the public.
That's not, my client's not blamed for that.
No. we adjourn.
I'm surprised.
All rise.